Okay, welcome everyone to this to the third session of the University Search Support Group, and the second one in person. We just had one this morning on the humanitarian careers and getting started in the humanitarian world. So this session is really aimed to showcase some of the work that the next generation is doing on COVID-19 specifically. So we have students in the past 2 years who have not only experienced the pandemic firsthand with online classes and online teaching, as well as for us as teachers, but also students who've turned this into almost a virtue and used this opportunity to study crisis response, humanitarian aid delivery, emergency management, or get hands-on involved in emergency management. So in this session, we want to showcase two of those examples. And we're also happy to hear from any other experiences and examples from the attendees. Before we get started, just a quick introduction from us hosting this session. My name is Kenny Meesters. I'm a lecturer and researcher at Tilburg University in the Netherlands. And at the university, I'm specializing in information management, the interplay of socio-technical systems, a little bit of nerd IT, a little bit of human organizational sciences. And I apply that specifically to emergency response and crisis management, how to organize these elements. I'm happy to host this session together with Jörg from the United Nations University.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny. And hello, everyone here in the room and also online. As you can see, we are a small group today, so we have enough time also to discuss, which is also good. And also, please raise your questions in between. As Kenny was saying, I'm with the United Nations University Institute for Environment and Human Security. I'm based in Bonn. I'm with the UN for some 15 years. And next to the affiliation with UNU, I'm also an UNDAC member, United Nations Disaster Assessment and Coordination. So from time to time, I'm also deployed to missions, and I'm an associate professor with the Disaster Management Training and Education Center in South Africa with the University of the Free State. So it's, I think this mixture that is what Kenny and us and myself is driving, this mixture between being an academic, a researcher, but also a practitioner in the field. And of course, to work with the next generation and to promote them into their professional career. And I think we will come back to this later. And this is why we have invited former students or current students also to present and share. And I think this is also what we will ask you once we are done with the initial presentations, that you have the chance also to share your experiences. And with that, Kenny, back to you.
So for those of you who are not familiar with the University Search Support Group, because we do think we need another acronym in this world. The goal of this network is really to provide a podium for the next generation of humanitarians. I'm sure you all have your own stories about how you got into this world, and it's always interesting to hear that. So far, it's like snowflakes. I haven't heard two stories that are the same. It's a lot of, interesting paths, choices, and opportunities that come along. But we do recognize there's a lot of people who might not, stumble upon these opportunities or, as lucky as we have. So we want to make sure that we open up the humanitarian community to these students. And of course, the HPW is public, they can register, but it can be a difficult world to navigate with its acronyms, the website, the networks, all these things. So our goal of this network is to be the guide, mentor, to show them this is the humanitarian community, this is where you are needed, this is where you could join the discussions, not only our own, but also the other networks. Vice versa, we're also trying to organize sessions like this one, where we say, well, you take the floor, show what you've done, what your view is on how we handle crisis management, how we deal in humanitarian aid. Let us know what you think. So that's the twofold objective of this network that has been around since 2018-19-ish. Of course, students have been coming and going at the HBW. By no means we're the only ones that are bringing in students or the only universities here. But we try to facilitate all universities, not only our own, but invite students from across the globe and make it a little bit easier to enter this world. So having said that, this is the brief outline we have. You see it's a bit of a shorter session. But we think that the two presentations we have from our students are really interesting journeys. Not only their own, what they have done, but also to see how they seize the opportunities and what opportunities were provided to them, and see what we can learn from that as a humanitarian community to make that a bit more structure and a little bit less ad hoc coincidence driven. There is time, as Jörg said, to also offer your own reflections, to ask questions, and please do. We're also recording the session, so it can be viewed later and shared later as well. And I think, yeah, this is our session. Tomorrow we'll have another session. I will come back to that at the end. But having said that, I would invite our first speaker, Maartje Schulte. And I'm sorry, Maartje, I couldn't find another picture on LinkedIn from you, so I've taken this one that shows your spirit very well. And Maartje, can I ask you to share your experience? Because Maartje has been involved as a student before in the minor disruptive events at a applied university, but then later on enrolled into the humanitarian response around COVID-19, or actually emergency response in the Netherlands, in a hands-on capacity. So it's a really interesting one, from a first contact I had with her to she becoming almost a full-fledged emergency manager. So Maartje, I will give you the rights to share your slides.
Thank you so much, Kenny. And it's a nice picture. It's me in Malawi.
You should have. You should be able to share your screen.
All right. Yes. All right. Do you see my screen now? I think so. Oh. All right. Do you see my screen now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. At first, thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about my experiences. It's always fun to share this story because it's a nice story. At first, something about my background. As Kenny was saying, I was first a student at the applied university, and I was studying social work. And I was studying social work from 2016 till 2020 when Corona started. And I did my graduation research at 510 at the Red Cross, where I was researching into the human side of data collection and the humanitarian context and co-design. It's a very fun subject to research into. So if you are interested in that, just contact me later on. And I did a minor disruptive events, as Kenny was saying, and there I met Kenny. And then the Corona started in 2020, and I am very happy that Corona is not that much influencing my life right now in the Netherlands, but I am aware that maybe in the next couple of months it will be back. So I didn't put an end note to the 2020 till 2022 or something. But in 2020, I joined the National COVID-19 response team. And in 2021, I joined the safety region Rotterdam-Rijnmond, where I joined another Corona response team. But today I will talk about the National COVID-19 response team. And right now I'm studying cultural anthropology and development sociology, and I'm writing about humanitarian context in the academic sphere. So I really like the hands-on part of Corona, of responding in the humanitarian context, but I really like the academic side as well. So it's nice to bring those two fields together in this presentation, or really in this, in this work. So today we will focus on the National COVID-19 response team. So how did I end up there? Well, I received an email from Kenny saying like 2 lines. I think it was, Marcia, can you contact me as soon as possible? This is my cell phone number. I couldn't find yours, so I'm emailing you. And like 2 days later, I was on my bike going to the office of the National Corona Response Team. It was 40 minutes from me away, so on a bike trip. And the next hour, I was calling and calling and calling, hands-on, immediately to respond to everything that needed to be done at that moment. I will talk about that further in a second. So the National COVID-19 Response Team. There are 7 sections, there were 7 sections in a response team: health and care, continuity and scarcity, scenario and planning, governance and partnership, society and resilience, information management, and long-term planning. And I was a part of the continuity and scarcity team. The same as Kenny, because Kenny was part of that team as well. So this was the team, continuity and scarcity. It was filled up with all different kind of people, people from the Red Cross, the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, firefighters, Tilburg University, Kenny, and me. So that was feeling a little weird to be around that kind of people, just a student, my first experience in the humanitarian context, and then working with that big people. So I will talk about that experience in a second, but this is the team, or this is part of the team, I need to say, because this is just a snapshot from one moment, and the team was just, some people came, some people went away, because also the police was part of this team. I forgot to put into the presentation, but the police went away when I came in. Okay. So my task was all about the personal protective equipment. So in the Netherlands, the personal protective equipment was being taken care of in the healthcare section by the LCH. And outside the healthcare, there was not really someone bothering about. So all the companies outside of the healthcare who needed the personal protective equipment, they didn't have a place to say, I need some masks as well, or I need some gloves as well, or some other things as well to protect my work environment, or to protect myself to my work environment. So we, as a national response team, in the second section, we came responsible to that. And I was the one getting all the calls from all the companies who are saying, I need those masks, and the healthcare, I get it, the healthcare needs the mask as well, but I need them also because I need to protect my employees. And what was I doing? I was calling all day. What do you need? How do you need it? And when do you need it? Because there were companies that needed masks like immediately, now. And there were also companies that needed it like, okay, I have some left, but in 2 weeks, I have a big problem. So we made an Excel sheet, we made a Trello board, we made a Signal group to have all the companies and all the sections, every company, what do you need, when do you need it, and how can we help you? So after using that, you maybe think, okay, this team, they have fancy technology to use, but literally this is where we began with Excel, Trello, Signal. But after a month, we were like, okay, we need something sustainable. We need something to work with. I can use an Excel, but it's nice to use in the first months to respond quickly, but we need something to really work with, which is easy to also explain to someone else. This is the situation, and this is what we need to do now, to just see it in the first second that you're seeing the screen. So we worked together with some students from the Tilburg University who came up with a beautiful program. I don't have a print screen from that, but maybe Kenny, you can share it later. Who made a program where we could just put in, okay, this is the company, this is what they need, this is when they need it, and this is maybe some additional information or something that we need to know beforehand. And everything was just very structured, and I'm a really structured person, so I really liked it. What I also really liked was working with people who are the same age. Like literally, you saw the picture before. I was the youngest person in our section, and there were also other students, other Tilburg University students in other sections, but not in mine. And sometimes that's difficult, like you're feeling, okay, am I doing the right thing? It's my first time in this kind of team. Can I do a brainstorm, or is that weird? And I don't know, working with people from the same age, also students, was a lot of fun. And it was also very nice because of the things I just said. So challenges, I was already talking about that. There was a bit of insecurity about, am I doing the right thing? Am I at the right place? Am I the best one doing this right now? Or is there someone who has the right expertise? It could be a little overwhelming. Why are we doing this? Are there other teams doing other things? What is the terminology we're using? There are like 100 teams in the Netherlands who are doing maybe the same, or are they doing different things, and why? And in the first months of this response, it's all not so clear. So it was a bit overwhelming maybe for everyone, but being for the first time in this kind of situation, it was a bit overwhelming for me as well. And then the responsibility. At some point, I felt really, really responsible for my task. There were companies calling me at 9 in the evening, like, oh, I need some masks tomorrow, otherwise we can't open, or something like that. And I felt really responsible. So I needed to handle that responsibility. And how can you handle that big responsibility? Just by sharing it with your team, by telling, okay, this is the situation. I really don't want to be called after like 7 or 8 in the evening. Okay, I know this is a response team, and I know I want to be available like all day, but I can't be available all day. That's not a sustainable situation for me. And that is too overwhelming. So just by sharing that problem could be fixed. And then another like weird thing in response teams, make yourself redundant. At some point, like after 2 months, 2.5 months, the storm like got lighter or something. The big response was done, and the companies could provide themselves for their PPEs. And that's a weird feeling, because you're working so hard and so long and everything with your task, and then you don't have any work anymore. And you are supposed to be happy because, okay, maybe the response is over, maybe the disaster is over, but is it over? That was a really weird feeling. And yeah, just use that feeling to get it as an opportunity and talk to your colleagues about it, talk to your team about it, because I think that's something that response teams usually feel. And I'm really interested if you and Kenny are feeling the same after a response, or in a response, they're feeling, oh, I'm getting redundant. Is that okay? And how am I dealing with that feelings? But those challenges and those feelings all came up in my first response. And I think what to take away from my little presentation right now is take the opportunities, get on that bike. If someone is emailing you and saying, okay, can you please call me? We need your help. just get on that bike, because it's a nice opportunity to get to know the field where you are enthusiastic about. I was very enthusiastic about it, and I wanted to get to know it. But you don't really need a disaster for it. You can also volunteer. You can volunteer at the Red Cross or little volunteer organizations in just local. Just see where they need help, because you need experience and you can find it over there. And also national level emergency response teams. I never even thought about it myself. I was always just looking at big opportunities, big teams, big international responses. But in the national level, there are so much opportunities and nice places to get experience, but also use your own knowledge and make yourself useful. And then another thing about the opportunities, it's very important to network. I was talking like in the first slide of this presentation about the security team. I was working after this experience in Rotterdam and Rijnmond, and I was only getting that opportunity because I was doing this. So network is very, very important, and it's also fun. It's fun to get to know people who are thinking the same or not thinking the same, but have the same interest in the humanitarian context and in responding to disasters. And then get familiar with the disaster response language or landscape. So the disaster response language, maybe you are getting familiar already by just reading academic pieces about disaster response or going to this kind of conferences. It's very important because just get familiar before the disaster, and you can use that experience in the disaster itself. Because otherwise it can be very overwhelming, as I was saying beforehand. Well, and the landscape, what kind of organizations are there on the national level, on the international level, locally? It's very fun to get to know the landscape. Then working together in a multidisciplinary team. Well, get to know your teammates and their expertises, because you can't do everything, you know. You can only learn from them, and you can use them in brainstorms and everything. And it's fun. They all have their own expertise and their reason to be in that team. And then another one, know yourself, because what knowledge do you have? What study did you do? What knowledge did you achieve there? But also what skills can you use? And an opportunity to get to know yourself and your skills are group projects. I know sometimes in school it's not that much fun to do the group projects, but use that group projects to get to know yourself. Are you, for example, an analyst, a structured thinker, an out-of-the-box thinker, a networker, presenter, coordinator? If you know that skills and your knowledge before the disaster happens, you can use that in the disaster response. Just to say to your teammates, I really like to present, so you can use me as a presenter, or I really like to network. It's okay for me to send those emails and everything. So you can just act quickly and know your value beforehand and have fun. It's really fun to take the opportunities and to work in the humanitarian context. Are there questions? Jörg, you raise your hand, so I'm really interested in your question.
Or did you? Sorry, you raise your hand? Did be the first.
That was a mistake, actually.
Sorry.
But well, first of all, thank you so much, Maartje, for sharing this. I think there's some. I was making, even though you and I have talked for the last 2.5 years by now, I was still making notes when you were talking. So just to clarify, when you say companies, we're talking about companies that are vital to keeping the Netherlands running, right? We're not doing this for the bakery around the corner. Well, that might be vital.
Well, that's very important to add.
Yeah. And what is, I think, interesting about the COVID-19, what you mentioned is the long-term, usually if you talk about real emergency, like humanitarian deployments, they're shorter. So, you know, you and I were at some point thinking like, okay, you know, the first days, okay, this is cool. We're gonna, and indeed, what you said, at some point you're thinking, yeah, you know, by now it would be nice to be in bed on time and not reading my emails again. And then I think we made that call in June somewhere, saying, okay, let's dial it down a bit and go to an operational, like a more standing organization instead of running around like crazy. I think that was a really unique one in the COVID-19. But definitely, I think the question you had to Jürgen and I about the experience after deployment, I'm not sure if that's the same, but you sometimes have this adrenaline rush, right? You come home, think, okay, I solved it. And then at home, you know, there's the laundry, things go back to normal.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that's, I think, yeah, I know this was your first response, but at least I do really recognize that feeling as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, it was also really weird because every day after the office, you're going home. And then home for me was waiting my graduation research. And I was doing that all just on my computer. And then the next day I was going to the office again. So everyone was being at home and we were the only ones going to the office and being able to go to the office. So that was
really that was nice. I've never had such a short drive from my town to Utrecht, which is normally a fully blocked highway. Actually, Sjoerd, you had a question.
Hi, Maartje. Sjoerd, we met a couple of months ago at Tilburg University. And I was really wondering, you were talking about like the anxieties of working with the big scary practitioners from the Red Cross and like, you know, the really large corporations. But did you actually feel valued as being a student in the surrounding of these experts and practitioners?
Nice question, thanks. Well, at first for me, it was just getting to know the situation. So I felt that it was the same for them. It was just a bit of, I don't know, cold feet to see what the value was from being a student right there. And I think in the first week, it was just hands-on working. And at the first day, I already felt really valuable or valued by our leader of the group, Jacques Sein, who was saying after my 10th call of the day, okay, this is why you are here. Thank you so much. I'm proud of you. And I was feeling like, whoa, okay, thank you. Because I was not feeling really valuable, but after a couple of days or weeks, I saw my own value. And I think maybe I could have used my student status a little more, but I think in this response, it was more hands-on and a little less student.
Right. And what could like the humanitarian organizations do that actually work together with students to make them feel valued in your experience?
Good question.
Situation.
I think maybe a little more brainstorms and then just involving the student side of the person as well, because the hands-on side was clear and I can do that task, okay, but there's more to the hands-on side, and brainstorms could sort of clarify that role as well. So I know brainstorms in the response are not that usual, but they could be of value. And I think the student side of this role could be more inside.
So you would say more also involved in the planning, the strategy, not just the execution of tasks, but, you know, because then you would understand how the tasks relate to the bigger response.
Yeah, because I think as a student, okay, you maybe don't have the experience of the strategy and the planning and everything, but you have some experience and you can learn fast and you can use the knowledge that you already have in the skills that you already have.
Yeah, excellent. Are there any other comments or questions for Maartje from the people in the room or people online? You can raise your hand or use the chat. I can give you the rights to talk. If not, thank you so much, Maatje, for sharing your story. I think there were some really inspirational moments. Joep?
Yeah, so if there are no more comments from people here in the room, small comments from my side. So first of all, Maatje, thank you so much for your contribution. And honestly, I very much also like the approach of the Netherlands just to pull in additional capacities during a response phase from national academia and universities. I'm very sure that this is not necessarily happen in other countries, at least not in my country. So I really appreciate this very practical approach. Secondly, reintegration after mission. I mean, in your case, it was a very long deployment, to call it that way. But also after shorter deployments, I think reintegration is becoming a more important topic, because automatically when you come home after work or after mission, you have seen pictures that otherwise your family or friends at home have not seen. So this is definitely something that is causing a situation that you should also be prepared for. Yeah, and this is, I think, why this becomes more and more part of training curricula for responders. And thirdly, your motivational statement on start small is very much appreciated, because in the end, I mean, when you apply for all these big international agencies, one of the first things that they will ask you is, what about your experiences? Yeah. So this is the egg and the chicken question. How do you get experiences without being with an organization? And from that point, starting with smaller projects, smaller agencies, NGOs is definitely, and also field camps. Not necessarily that you directly apply for wonderful headquarter location, because this is obviously what everybody wants at one point. So starting smaller is definitely a good advice. And with that, I think I will come to our next presenter. Thank you again, Matthias. And now I will quickly introduce the next speaker, Florence Nick. And I think the interesting point also that we all learned from COVID is that suddenly a lot of people came into response, if you want it or not. You're part of a response in your country, in your own environment. And to introduce Florence, in 2013, we have started in Bonn a joint master program together with the University of Bonn. It's a joint master program entitled Geography of Environmental Risks and Human Security. And Florence was one of our joint master students a couple of years back. I think she joined 2017. And then during COVID, she decided that this is an interesting topic also for her master thesis. And I think with this, and without further ado, I hand over to Florence. Great to have you, Florence.
Hello, everyone. Thanks very much. And I'm very happy to have the opportunity to speak here. I've actually prepared some slides because I would like to share with you my thesis findings. Okay. Let me know if this is not working as I just proceed. So yeah, I'm Florence. I graduated from the master's program Environmental Risks and Human Security last year at the United Nations University in Bonn. My background is geography, so I did my bachelor's in geography in Bonn, and then also my master's in geography, my first master's in Nice in France, also looking at environment, climate, risk, and health. And I've always been interested in how the so-called vulnerable population group are doing. So, and I thought that, well, they need some support. And yeah, so I'm going to talk about my thesis, approach, findings, lessons learned, try to make it brief with the vast amount of data that I actually have. Resilience of people with disabilities in Germany during the COVID-19 pandemic was my topic. I chose this topic. So how did I get there? 2019-20, I was actually in Madagascar doing an internship with the German development organization GIZ. And then my intention was to do data collection in rural Madagascar on gender roles and related issues. But then I came back here early 2020 to Germany, left with no thesis topic. But yeah, I really thought I need to do something. I need to research on something that's relevant right now and to find out what the world is going through right now. So I'm hearing impaired myself. I have severe hearing loss. I'm wearing 2 hearing aids. And then everybody was wearing masks, and communication outside was pretty troublesome and uncomfortable. And I was like, at the same time, people with disabilities, or also someone with hearing loss, they were raising concerns and expressing themselves in newspaper articles, social media about being overlooked during the pandemic. And I thought, why don't I just talk to the people and look at the pandemic risk management in Germany at the same time? And that's what I did. So I'm going to briefly present to you my approach. First of all, I'd like to say it was really important to me to look at the resilience of people with disabilities. So look at their own capacities and their own needs. And like I said, look at how the pandemic is being managed in Germany. So I had 3 research questions asking how have the pandemic and the related changes affected the resilience of people with disabilities. For that, I looked at coping strategies and also at enabling factors and constraints. And I defined the resilience as the ability of an individual to maintain or improve one's well-being. It was very important to me to have as many factors as possible. I looked at the pandemic virus, social, economic, and political structures and processes, at human, social, financial, physical, natural capital, and mental health as well. And then I looked at how did the people respond to all this, so their coping strategies. I collected data in August, September 2020, and I talked to 19 people with various disabilities, including mental and physical impairments. And I did this online. So that was an advantage to talk to the people online, because of course there was no health risk involved, and some people were very susceptible to a severe course of illness. And and in Germany, I talked to people in Germany. So I found out that the resilience of each and everyone was influenced by the interaction between their physical and mental health, between social environmental factors and their individual responses. I want to briefly lay out the most important enabling and constraining factors for their ability to maintain or improve their well-being. Of course, physical and mental health was important. Social support from close family and friends helped a lot to deal with the challenges they faced and to overcome these, and just feeling of being supported. Online communication, because, for example, someone who relies on a wheelchair no longer needs to take a troublesome itinerary to get to work. Or, it was just good to avoid also the health risks then. Coping strategies related to positive emotions and mental health. Remember, I said I also looked into mental health. So, and then some had expressed that having adapted to living with disabilities and the associated challenges have empowered them to deal with challenges, and also to deal with everyday health risks, which is of course an advantage during a pandemic. And I'm gonna give you a few quotes in a bit to make this a bit less abstract. But yeah, of course, the constraining factors were everything that hindered the people in the enabling factors that I just listed. So contact restrictions meant that they had less social support. Then there were a few things that impacted or posed a threat to the people's health. So medication wasn't available as needed. Then there was this discussion about a potential triage policy. Triage policy means that people with certain impairments would have been deprioritized or worst case not received any treatment in case of a critical pandemic situation and medical resource shortage. And that caused very big concern to some of the people that I talked to. Psychological support was available and accessible inconsistently, which was especially a concern to people with mental impairment. Risk communication as such an essential point, like element of pandemic risk management, was described as with an overload of information, even alarmism, lack of clarity. So basically completely failing its purpose. And then, yeah, of course, similarly to what I said earlier, coping strategies related to negative emotions were also constraining. And those resulted from the constraining factors like increased fear, increased stress, and also feelings of being excluded from society. I'm going to go back to the enabling factors that I just talked about. And I want to highlight a few quotes. So someone said, there was this fear, and I'm glad that I could at least keep in touch with my friends and family. And social support was described as the highlights and sources of strength for the people to deal with all the stress they were going through. And then what I said, someone, when someone expressed having adapted to life with disability, I'm going to highlight this quote of someone. She said, "You learn to be more responsible with your body and its resources." The experience of disease outbreak, not COVID, but her own disease, has helped me to optimize my resources, to better focus my energy, to communicate more what I need. And I think this is very empowering for someone to really deal with whatever stress is coming. And mental health as an important enabling factor. People were talking about their fighting spirit, and some recognize that fear is limiting, which really helped to deal with the struggles during the pandemic. However, I want to here emphasize a few quotes relating to the constraining factors. So contact restriction. Someone with visual impairment said, "It's so difficult. I try to keep to the distance rules as best as I can, but of course I don't always manage. It's a lot more exhausting than before." So you can really see that the ability to maintain or improve well-being is hindered by those contact restrictions. COVID risk communication. Someone said, "You just had to turn on the TV or radio. Everything was full of information, full of alarmism. I was kind of scared. They said you're only allowed to go shopping for essential goods. And then I was scared to go outside." So risk communication made the people more insecure, or made some more insecure and scared. So as a result, they isolated themselves even more and then limited themselves from opportunities to improve their well-being. on triage policy, someone said, I fear that the participation of people with disabilities in daily life will be less and less guaranteed. I'm concerned that the lives of people with disabilities are worth less. Just look at triage. Yeah, so I hope this gives you a good image of what the people were really going through at that time. And to sum this up, I've seen that people with disabilities are very knowledgeable about their own needs and abilities. I've seen remarkable coping strategies regarding stress and discrimination. The group called People with Disabilities is a very heterogeneous group, so they have diverse and unique needs and capacities. However, I've seen that there was a lack of inclusiveness of the needs of people with disabilities in the COVID risk management, and that caused stress. It caused feelings of discrimination and stigmatization, even humiliation, and with some feeling they were reduced in their value as human beings in society. And I think that's a very relevant finding, and therefore they were obviously reduced in their resilience and their ability to maintain or improve their well-being, especially if someone decides, or if you cannot maintain your body functioning, especially in a critical pandemic situation. So someone said, I can't blame the people, but how they deal with it can be changed. And I think much of this is our own responsibility. Participation doesn't just mean society has to make sure that. Yes, it has to, but in cooperation with us. And we as people with disabilities also have to contribute to it. So I'm saying that stronger inclusion and participation of people with disabilities in pandemic risk management in Germany will be essential to support each individual's resilience. Yeah, so those were my findings, and I'm very glad that I could present them here and basically have the people speak that I talked to. And yeah, feel free to ask me questions, if not here and now, send me an email. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Florence, for your contribution. And I think, in fact, even if we take a look at the larger existing UN frameworks, it took a lot of time so that the topic of people with disabilities became a famous topic in these frameworks. And I think it was, to my knowledge, it was just the one in Sendai, so the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, that really gave a specific notion to this topic. Before, it was randomly or vaguely described, and we have to take care of the most vulnerable and all these things, but there was no specification on people with disabilities. So it became prominent in Sendai, and then 1 year later in 2016 at the World Summit, Humanitarian World Summit in Istanbul. So thank you very much for this important point. Do we have any questions from the participants online or here in the room, or comments to the presentation of Florence?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Forgive me for my ignorance, but what is triage?
Can you please just quickly say who you are and your affiliation?
I'm Johan Lange. I'm a student at the University of Applied Sciences in Avancing in the Netherlands.
Thank you.
Yeah, what is triage? Because I wasn't sure about.
Yeah, thanks. Of course, thanks for the question. So triage means that if there are many people who need treatment, so you can imagine the emergency room of a hospital, and there are many people who need treatment because they're severely sick. And maybe at the same time, you don't have enough resources. So you gotta act quickly because lives are at risk. And then you need to make decisions who to treat. And then there was this policy recommendation rule that people with impairments will be like lower in the list. So people with, or there was actually this fear that doctors relate to people with impairments, lower chances of survival. But yeah, basically triage is that you select people for treatment based on mostly their chances of survival.
Great, thank you.
Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Michael and I'm a postdoc researcher at Delft University of Technology. Thank you very much for the talk, and I think what you did is really nice study and very interesting study. So I wonder whether or not the people that you interviewed also like formulated their needs, what they would like to have, like practically speaking, right? So they feel excluded, right? And you call for more inclusion. So did they name something that they would like to have, like how they can feel themselves better?
Sorry, can somebody closer to the microphone just repeat the most essential thing, because that's the thing with the audio.
Repeat the question a little bit louder.
It's on top of the TV, so just project towards the camera on the top.
Right, so I have to scream and that's it.
Speak up.
And speak up.
One more time. So the people that you interviewed, did they mention something specific that they would like to receive, like in terms of policies? Do they want to meet people more frequently? Do they need some, I don't know, maybe more like food, anything? Did they formulate the needs that will make them feel better?
Thanks for repeating, and thanks for the question. So yeah, some said maybe first come, first serve. So that means the first person who needs treatment will be treated and not based on their impairments, for example. And then, yeah, they did express that it has to happen with them. So they need to be consulted in whatever case to improve the situation for them. Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things.
Yes, thank you.
I see we also have a question online from Theodora. Let me give you you can unmute yourselves, Theodora.
Yeah.
And ask your question.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, go ahead.
Very well.
Okay. Thank you very much for this contribution. My name is Theodora. I also work at UNU EHS and I'm a student there as well. And I know Florence personally as well. Really interesting contribution. I really enjoyed it. But one question that kind of stick with me throughout the presentation was whether there are, or are you aware of any direct involvement of people with impairment of any sort in the actual decision-making processes that directly affect them? How is the situation in Germany?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Theodore. So I know that the people with disabilities are they're strong in social media. So there are a few people that are actually quite popular who regularly post and have blogs, newsletters and everything. So I'd say there is a good network among them themselves. Then I know that they have representatives for people with disability in the parliament. So there is at least one person who speaks for the community. Yeah, and then they were reworking this triage policy, so the prioritization in case of a critical pandemic situation for treatment. They are just in the process of remaking it, and that is because the community tried to take this to court. So they were doing a communal complaint, and I think they at least triggered a process. So I want to say that this community they're aware of their voice, at least in Germany, I can say, and they try to be loud, I would say. Yeah. And then, yeah, as I said, in the government, they have at least one representative that's there on the federal level, and I think also in the national level.
Yeah. Maybe if I can add one comment to the statements of Florence and also to your question. I think in general, the number of special representatives for people with disabilities is increasing in some countries, but I also believe that we are far away of having the necessary infrastructure in place. And this is not only the case for a pandemic situation, which is a kind of longer onset thing, but if you think, for instance, about other disasters that heavily infect infrastructure, also communication infrastructure, we don't have the necessary mechanisms and tools at hand just to inform these communities. Think about the blind, think about the deaf people. In these situations, they are in stronger need to be informed, and it's not necessarily the case that all the national disaster management agencies do have these instruments to inform them appropriately. If you really have a short onset disaster, let it be a flood or something, people with disabilities might meet or might find their technical assistances destroyed. Or if you have the situation of floods, so you definitely have the situation where emergency response need to look at these communities with priorities. And this is not necessarily the case. And we have seen this actually during the floods in Western Europe just last year. So we are far away of having really the appropriate infrastructure for these communities. And this is definitely something that needs to be changed.
Okay, Florence, thank you so much. I will just a few comments from my side before we close this. So what I really appreciate about your story is that there is a personal connection, right? I think often we tend to think of ourselves as outsiders or people looking from as researchers, sometimes even as humanitarians, as people from the outside looking in. And here you have a topic that you say, well, I can understand, if I look at from my own life experience and my own situation, I'm wondering about this. I think this is a very valuable contribution, especially for people who are new to the humanitarian field, who can bring this fresh perspectives in and say, wait a minute, the things that we're doing, if I look at my own life and I would be in the situation, this is what I was wondering. And then in the research, you can explore this. But even beyond the research, in the response yourself, that is a valuable voice that you could be yourself for that community. So I really like that you pick a subject and say, okay, this humanitarian world is one thing, but aside from that, there's something else I can bring. And let's combine the two. And that will inform my research. I think that's a very powerful motivator and a very relevant part of that. And I think what Jurgen indeed said, one of the things I noticed, at least in Western Europe, and I guess it's the same in Germany as in the Netherlands, is that we initially approached this as a emergency response, as a something that is dealt with by emergency agencies. Like in the Netherlands, it was the fire brigade and safety regions initially. And then slowly you start seeing that this looks more and more like a humanitarian crisis, where you have to follow humanitarian principles of representation, inclusivity. And that's actually something, ironically, our government wasn't aware of, because that's something we do, humanitarian response is something we do in other countries. It's not something we do ourselves. And we were lucky that in that team, we had humanitarians with international experience bringing in that perspective. But I think this is a valuable one to take those humanitarian findings, best practices, or even challenges, if we haven't solved them yet, and bring them back to, wait a minute, something happens in our country. We also have to follow those standards and apply it to ourselves. I think that's what I really like about the research. And the communication is interesting. We've done some research into how do you communicate? Is it only about things you can't do? We've done a pilot project with the safety region where we said, well, let's try to communicate what we can do. You know, not only emphasize things that are prohibited, but if you want to celebrate your birthday party, you can't do this, you can't do it, but what can you do? It's a much more empowering way of communicating and a positive way. So I really like that in your research. My last question to you, Florence, is what's next? Have you, is it published? Are you going to publish? And have you had the chance to bring this to your politicians or your government or the decision makers? Because I think what you're showing is very valuable. I hope that somebody will act on it as well.
Yeah, thanks. I'm considering publishing it actually. Right now I'm working at the UNU EHS as a research assistant, but I've not yet had the chance to bring it to the politicians. Yeah.
Okay, I hope you you can make that you know, emphasize it. I know it's a hard audience to get the attention from, but who knows?
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think the framework where Florence is working now is an initiative that was built after the floods last year, Climate Resilience Initiative. And actually we will report on this tomorrow. So for those who are interested, please join us also tomorrow. And Florence, I fully agree with what Kenny has said, because also in this situation during the floods, we have again seen these tragic moments of people with disabilities that they were left alone. It's really this, they were left alone, simple as that, but that was the tragic, that no one or not enough care was taken about situations where people were just sitting in their centers and there was not enough emergency support at the right time. So this is definitely something to learn. And from that perspective, Florence, also, thank you for taking the bike, as Marty was calling it. It was your bike to jump on this topic and to materialize this master thesis. And also, again, thank you for presenting here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. With that, if there's any other comments from people in the room or any you know, insights you want to share, you're more than welcome. If not, tomorrow we'll have another session, same hour, same room, different Zoom link though, starting at 2 o'clock Central European summertime, where we're going to have people talking about their work, their experience in the research, the thesis, projects they've done around floods and the flood response, and specifically focused on the floodings last summer in the region, the German, Belgium, and Dutch region. With that, I thank everyone. I thank our panelists for sharing their experiences, their insights. Thank the attendees for joining today. And I wish you a beautiful afternoon and hopefully see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.